Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the pre-market rundown for TriggerCharts for, where are we? Friday, July 5th, 2019. Very happy that you joined us today. Hopefully you had a great 4th of July, and we're going to get some insights into TradeStation version 10 today. Quickly, just to let me know where everybody sits in terms of what you're using for your TradeStation version, just chat back to me in the video chat or the chat panel right there. And let me know if you're using version 9.5, if you're using version 10, or what's going on, so I kind of understand what you're actually doing. So just chat that back on to me. So good amount of people using version 10, a couple using 9.5. So I've been using 9.5 for a long time. Now, I don't know if you know this, but you can actually use 9.5 and 10 at the same time. Well, not at the same time, but you can install it on one computer, and you can actually use 9.5 and switch back and forth to 9.5, or you can switch to 10 at any time. A little bit of a process to do so. The computer just needs to reset, needs to go through a process to authorize and to make sure you're using the right version. But basically, you could use either one or the other. One thing that's really important to understand is that workspaces, the areas that you're working in, are not backwards compatible. So if you save something in version 10, you can't use it in 9.5. Any of your 9.5 workspaces work just fine in 10. So try to make sure that if you're going to go back and forth and you're going to use both programs for whatever reason, you make sure that you have a different directory saved for your version 10 workspaces and for your 9.5 workspaces. Hopefully that makes sense. Version 10 adds a lot of nice things to the overall UI. It's a little bit more appealing to the eye. It has richer colors. There are some things that you could do in there that make things a little bit easier, like some macros. There's some top bars that you can work on, like time frames, and you can work on studies, all that from right here. Of course, you can still do your right click and grab everything from there, but we'll go through that in a second, and I'll show you what I did, because I had set up some macros inside of version 9.5 in order to change intervals and to put on and off studies and things like that. A little bit easier with version 10. There's a couple other things too on the top where you can just kind of flip open your apps, or take a look at what's happening with your position graph at any given time, so you can see what's going on there. And those will just automatically hide as you just saw it. So we're going to go through that and come up with some things that maybe you have as questions and answer a few things. Before we do so, though, I want to mention that, of course, everything we talk about today on this webinar is simply for educational purposes. There is no offer to buy, a solicitation of any sort, of any kind, nor is there a recommendation of anything right there. And by the way, I didn't introduce myself, I don't think. I'm Andrew Horowitz. I'm the founder, co-founder of TriggerCharts with Kevin Hoffman. When I'm not here in a couple of weeks, Kevin Hoffman's going to take over the wheel here and walk you through the pre-market rundown on Fridays. But for right now, I'm here. We'll talk about this. And so just make sure that you understand this is, again, for educational purposes only. So there's the disclosure on your screen. We'll have a replay available on this on our website at TriggerCharts.com. We'll also have it on the YouTube channel for TriggerCharts. So you can subscribe to that and make sure you get all the updates on that. Let's close that down, take a look at a few things. First of all, a couple of things we have to update in terms of our weeklies. We're going to go through this very quickly because I want to get into some of the TradeStation 10 questions that you may have as well. Global PMIs, the manufacturing numbers around the world, have clearly been weakening. We're seeing this all over the world. We're seeing this in Europe. We're seeing this in China. We're seeing this in Japan. Here in the United States, we're seeing a little bit of a rollover, very minor, but nonetheless, we are seeing some amount of weakening. We did see a jobs number today, and that was pretty exciting because expectations were for a number of about 170,000, 160,000 on the heels of a very poor jobs number last month. Remember, we had 70,000, which was a letdown. That put the Fed directly in play. Where are we now? Well, we saw the number come out today pretty hot, 225, 224 approximately. Expectations were for 170. The unemployment rate ticked up a little bit to 3.7% from 3.6%. So, right now we are all in an environment that there is a lot of expectation that the Fed is going to do something and do something very significant this month. As a matter of fact, there's a 100% probability or a chance based on Fed fund futures rates that there's going to be a 25 basis point or at least a 25 basis point cut in July, which is only in a few weeks. Now, all of a sudden, we get this number that's thrown in, a really hot employment number, and all of a sudden, people are scratching their head and wondering what's going on. So as we talked about earlier, we're seeing that there is, where are we now? 103 on the minus side on the Dow Jones futures. We're seeing that the SPUs or the S&P futures, you got to watch where you go here, where you click, down 14, NASDAQ down 54. So a little bit of disappointment on the fact that, hey, we're definitely getting a cut coming up. And all of a sudden, here we are with, wait, maybe the economy is a little bit stronger than we think. A lot of cross currents right now. This is what happens when you have a reliance on one particular party like the Fed in order to make sure that markets stay up and that they're going to continue their very soft and their very dovish stance. And you get a monkey wrench like this thrown on it in it, what's kind of is questionable. We're going to talk about, and we did talk about this Bitcoin dash and crash, that great blow off top example that we showed you last time. I'll mention that. What else do we got here? Next week, we have eco numbers, wholesale inventories. We have inflation both on the wholesale level and on the retail level, both CPI and PPI coming out next week. Also, we had some spreads tightening over the last week or so. They're kind of changing a little bit today. We saw that sub 2% level on the 10-year, on the 10-year Treasury, is kind of ticking towards the higher part of that, may even go above 2% right now. I got a couple of things I want to show you. First of all, thank you very much for making TriggerCharts the #1 overall, not only product from a rating standpoint, but also from a #1 popular standpoint. So we are the #1 most popular trading indicators on the TradeStation trading app store. So thank you very much for that. You really are helping us out. And I know, more importantly, that we're helping you out because I'm getting tons of emails on a regular basis telling us how great the trading has been for people who have been utilizing and how easy it's been compared to what they've done before. So that really is what we're looking for. That's important. I mentioned the 2 to 10 spread. This is a chart that I just picked up and put together just yesterday. Maybe a little bit different right now, but you'll notice that we're seeing this 2 to 10 spread, where is the differential between the yield on the 2-year, the yield on the 10-year, that whole inverted curve concept that we're really worried about right now. Well, it's starting to come down and tick into this red territory here. We're still not in the negative sense right now. We're not seeing an inversion yet on the 2 of the 10. That would be if we go below the 0 line here, but we're still holding up pretty well. We've been doing so. We got close to it back at the end of 2018, and that's where people started freaking out a lot. Things changed dramatically, of course, into this year. We're starting to head down there again. We'll see what happens. If, in fact, the Fed does reduce rates, we'll probably see this resolve a little bit more favorably. But if they don't, we may continue to see this tightening happening. The theme this week is clearly animal spirits. We've seen a lot of animal spirits that no matter what the data has been, no matter what the tailwind or headwind or geopolitical issue that happens, whether it's crude oil in Iran, whether it's the trade talks, etc., people are buying. We did see this in the trend also very clearly, which we'll show you in a moment, that if you look historically or directly actually at the history of the daily, of the weekly, the longer term time frames, you look at the shorter term time frames, what are you seeing? Well, you're seeing that there is a long bias overall for equities, whether it's the S&P 500 index, whether it is the Dow, whether it's the NASDAQ, whatever you want to look at, there has been a bias to the long side when it comes to equities. That is obvious, of course, but that's what you want to keep kind of contained and understood, because that's where you want to trade. You want to trade where your bias is until it changes, which it may be happening right now. The G20 meeting, a giant nothing burger. We came out of it with a truce, not even anything more than that. I mean, some comment that the Chinese are going to start buying our agricultural products. They walked that back today already. If you didn't see the news, they said that if there's any flip-flop by the U.S., they're going to be not buying the agriculture. So if maybe U.S. cancels a meeting, or if there's going to be some change, they're going to slow down or stop buying agricultural products. So already there's some, walking back. They also mentioned, China, that they will not, absolutely not do anything if tariffs remain. If there's going to be any tariffs that remain on any of their products, they will not do a deal. So kind of important to understand with that. We're waiting the Fed. That's in July, of course. This month, we're waiting to see if we're going to see a drop in rates. New highs in markets have been persisting on a regular basis. We saw new highs in the Dow. We saw new highs on the S&P 500. I want to make sure a couple things before we go a little further is that you are, in fact, on the list to get alerts, announcements, and information about the webinar updates. You can do that over at TriggerCharts.com. And we're going to talk today about Tesla. They had an interesting report this week that shot the stock up pretty nicely. We're starting to see that we're going to be getting into, in about 2 weeks, approximately 2 weeks, we're going to get into earnings season. We're going to see the banks, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America. Some interesting moves in Bitcoin. NEO, a lot of people have asked me about NEO before, as well as crude oil. Let's get to this. This is an interesting chart that I put up here that I keep. This is kind of one of my desktops that I use on a regular basis. So on the left-hand side right here, what you're going to see is that there is a chart of the NYSE composite, and goes back to the beginning of the year right now. We have the McClellan oscillator, which I put a little bit more color on, but you see the McClellan oscillator is up towards the 128. Areas such as over 250, under 250, these are really areas that you need to pay attention to. But when we're getting below zero, above zero, that's also something you need to pay attention to. It's something I like to look at just to see the advancer decliners and really what's happening in terms of the look and feel of that. You can see this is, again, TradeStation version 10. Nice colors. I mean, they really pop. Hopefully you can see that on your side. Is it looking good on your side? You see these really rich colors on version 10? I also keep a scorecard of the 52-week new highs. I want to see how many stocks are making new highs, and we're pretty good shape right here. I mean, we were down here in the zero range back in the end of 2018. That was a signal that, wait, we're getting down to these levels that are questionable. So what we did was we said, hey, you know what? We combined that with some McClellan, and in fact, we went one step further, and we look at, for example, the KRI indicator, the key reversal indicator, and we saw back then, look at this, we saw this big move down. This was a giant signal to back up the truck. We've talked about this before. This is an area, if you look right here, and you look at where we see this, you don't get these that often, these kind of magenta-y colors right there. You got these clusters, these dots that formed, and then we got this -6 to -7 on the actual number. That's not numbers you see very often. On the top end, you do see those. You do see overbought situations that do persist for a while. Oftentimes, they do resolve a little bit lower. See that? Right now, we saw one here, resolve lower. But again, right, look at this one right here. We saw a -4 with a cluster. This was a buy signal. Now, I want to make sure you're clear about something. This app for the TradeStation Trading App Store is only used for one symbol and one symbol only. This is it. What you want to do is use this only for the SPY. That's it, SPY. It won't work if you put in any other symbol. We've coded this that it will fail. It will not work. If you put another symbol, it would just stop working. The reason for that is that we want to look at a broad market base, an efficient market, to see what's happening in a very broad manner. All this particular indicator does is give you, frankly, every once in a while, these wonderful signals like we're seeing over here, some of these top areas. That's all you want to find when there's a major overbought or a major oversold, where you may want to say that, you know what, things are looking really bad, but it's time to possibly get in. Now, you combine this with other indicators that we have, or that you may use as well, some of your oscillators or trending indicators, maybe even moving averages. But this is a great tool, and we put it out very inexpensively. Great tool just to have on your desktop to check, like I just did. I go through this on a regular basis. I go through, okay, what I need to know. Let's take a look. Very simply, let's go look at this. I also look at, okay, let me look at my market data. What I want to see is this a daily, look, what am I looking at? I'm looking at things like the tick. I'm looking at, again, the advancers decline lines over here. I'm looking at new highs and new lows. I'm looking at a 5-minute tick. I'm looking at the NYSE. I'm looking at volume on the NYSE. I'm looking at volume on the NASDAQ. And then I'm looking at the TRIN, or the ARMS index, some people call it. I'm looking at where the trade is on, is there excessive, even though the markets may be moving one way or the other, what's happening right now, here and now, in terms of the market. So I set up a simple what is it, 6 different windows right here, and I want to look at what's happening. It gives me a really good flavor for the intraday and the longer term, kind of move through that. The other thing I do is I have a tab that I call movers. And I don't know if you've used this before, but this is a, I have the hot lists. So you use a hot list and you can kind of like say, okay, what do I want? Here it shows I have equities, exchange all. I want to see the percent gainers one day, and there it comes. And then it's sorted by the #1 gainer. So I can take a look at this. Oh, hey, you know what? Fuel cell energy. Let's take a look at that. Click that. Get a little chart on it, see what's happening, something I want to trade, something I want to look at. Is it something interesting? Same thing on the losers, right? You want to look at something like, for example, let's see what's interesting on this one. Rio Tinto, it's got some volume there today. So what's happening with Rio Tinto? I can take a look at this. I can see the volume. I can see my radar. I got all my things going on here. I got my aileron on there. Where's the move on this? Now, this is, of course, pre-market view. During the market, it's going to tick and move. But right now, we have pre-market where we just saw the close where it was. But it's down 5% for the day. So I keep my hot lists on there, and then I keep an extra one here if I want to just take a look at Apple or something. I can just type it in there and just look at it very quickly. So again, I have all this set up so I can easily move through my day and find out what's going on. I have something called a rotation. So on this, we coded a 5-day change, year-to-date change, month-to-date. You see that right here on the top? Let's take a look at here on the top. I'm looking at 5-day, year-to-date, month-to-date. See all these? So what I could do now is I could just sort it. I was like, okay, year-to-date, what's going on? Let's look at the US EM, Korea, not doing well year-to-date, but yet the CSI 300, the Chinese stocks are doing really well. So you can get an idea of what's going on. I could sort it by month-to-date. These are things that you can code. If you know anything about easy language. Something that's very interesting, just again, something for me to understand what's happening with the markets and how things are playing. So let's get back to where we want to be today. Okay, so here's again something of interest. I want to show you this. Many of you have seen this. If you haven't seen this, take a look at our other videos. This is the Commander series. Basically what you have is a radar screen that goes on the top. What you're looking at is a 30. And you're looking at so 30 right here, you're looking at 60, 240 daily, and you're looking at weekly, right? Now you could change these up. You could only go 30 as a minimum, but you could do this one at 90 minutes. You could do this at 480. Any divisible number by 30 that's clean, you can put it there. You can put it daily here, weekly. You can even put it monthly if you really want to. Basically, what we're doing here is we're setting this up so you look from right to left. So right now we see, hey, there's a long alert here on the weekly for the ES. Okay, that's good. We're seeing that we're also long on a daily for 3 bars. Starting to get some short in here, which would make sense on the shorter bars because we're trading right now a bit lower on the ES. But we look from right to left on this. So, okay, that's the first part of this. And you can set this up any way you want. So it gives you a real good graphical and visual way of looking at things. Really helpful to make it really easy on your life. The colors are good, so you can just see, hey, easily green. Orange is a profit, or a long, out or in is kind of like a profit taking movement. It moves in real time. You got these yellows, which are long alerts on crude. You got a short alert on the Nikkei. You're getting some movement on gold right here. Gold was long for 5 weeks. Dailies come off, starting to see it turn around right here, saying, hey, you know what, on a 240 minute, get out of that trade, or at least be aware that you want to get out of that trade if you're trading on those time frames. And we're seeing some shorts, 2 bars on the 30 and 2 bars on the 60. Okay, we got all that. But what I want to show you also is on version 10, I want to show you the charts. So let's take a look at this. If you haven't done this as a way to customize this, and you can see this, let's bring this up. Let's make this so much bigger so we can see this. So what I did here is, I put in a couple of things on the right here. So I want to change this to any interval. I want to be easily able to, you just have to do this with macros. Version 10 allows you to just have these things on top where you can just change things. You can change and add studies. You want to add a study, add a strategy, add a group. You want to do your drawings. I have my drawings on the left-hand side here. If you notice, what I did was I just wanted to have it so it's easily acceptable. So on my charts, what I do is I put my drawings on the left here. On the top is where I'll call it the macro bar, if you will. That's where we use it. And it makes it really easy. But what I did was I also customized it. If you see this little dot here next all the way to the right of this bar, there's a little customize here. See that customize? You can customize this and you can do something like, I don't know, you want to do a style. I want to say, hey, I want to put my candles there. Well, you take this and you drag it, and you just move it right up to right there, and now you get your styles. So now you say apply that, and you can change your styles to whatever you want. So you can change it to candles or whatever it is. You can just customize this. So I'm going to customize this. Actually, if you want to take it off, you should be able to do this, I think. Oh no, you got to go back to customize, then move it off. So that was off. But what's important is that I can easily change my interval. So I want to change my interval to 60 minutes. I just want to quickly click this. Now, some people do this by hand. You want to change it to 10 minutes, whatever you want to do here, right? I want to enable my studies. I want to take off the autopilot. Let's just take them all off for a second. Everything's off. I have a clean chart, what a chart normally looks like. Now I can say, okay, what do I want to put on? Well, let's say I just want to put on my radar. I just want to see what's going on there. I want to see what's happening with, this is a part of the Commander series. This is the market profile that we use so regularly. We can see that, you know, to the left, there really was nothing. There's a 10-minute chart. Well, let's look a little bit longer. Let's look at a 60-minute chart. Okay, we're looking at this and we can see that, all right, the radars are showing that right about here was a point that we were concerned about, that we see if it does drop below that, there's really nothing much going to hold this back down to about 20, what is that, 29.66. Is that 66? Yep, 29.66. We're right now at 29.83. This is on a 60-minute chart. We could do our drawings. You could take your, you know, drawings in terms of anything you want to look at here. You want to take a box. You want to draw a box over here and kind of, you know, look at this range and say that's a range that I really should be looking at. You want to take, you know, an arc, any of the tools that you know that you're used to, whether it's a simple line that you want to use. I like to draw my horizontal line. So we'll say, okay, where's the system support here? Clearly, you know, we can move that around. So basically what we're seeing is that it's pretty much the same tools on version 10 as that there was on version 9.5, but they're a little bit easier to look at, a little bit easier to find once you get used to it. You have to get used to it, okay? The bottom line is it's not gonna come easy. Once you get this going, it's gonna be like, okay, what do I do from here? The thing that I did that made my life easier in terms of this was that I put this intervals here. And again, I'll show you exactly how to do this. Let's customize this. We go to the time frames, go all the way down to where it says interval. See that? And you just drag it where you want it to go. You just drag it right there, stick it there, and then you'll have your intervals able to switch around any way you want. And there's other things you could do. You could do, you know, daily. You could change it to line breaks or momentum, point and figure charts, range charts, whatever you want to do. But here's usually what people use is the daily or the 3-minute, 5-minute, 60-minute, whatever it is. And then again, you can enable studies. Now, if you want to put on, for example, a new study, you can just click the studies. You can say, you know, add a study or add a strategy, whatever you want to do. It'll open up your screen to add a strategy or add a study. So you want to put in something in here, whether it's a paint bar, and you want to put, I don't know, let's see what we got here. Volume gradient, maybe. Probably need volume on the bottom there. So gotta probably take this one off. There's your volume gradient. I had one on there. So here's your volume gradient. You can do your settings and all that. But you can take these studies off and so, you know, edit your studies here. You can take this off. It's pretty much the same look and feel as the old one. So you can just remove that, close, quickly go through here. Like I said, enable studies. There's your altimeter, your autopilot. This is what we like to look at right here. Sometimes we take the radar off. That's the kind of look that you're used to seeing on this. We have the aileron on the bottom here showing that the momentum has changed on this. And you're seeing that the autopilot is showing on. Now we're looking at right now a 60-minute chart. You can see that in the background. You can set your background to show this. Seeing on a 60-minute chart that, you know, it did call for a short twice here, you know, to call for a short back at this level here. So that was 29.99. You got a 5-point gain right there. It called for a short alert again at 21.994, and you're at 29.85 right now. So you got another 9-point gain right there. So again, you could just click around this any way you want and see what's going on with this. You know, different. And then you could use your, by the way, up. I don't know if you know this, but up and down arrows. I'm using my up and down arrows on my keyboard. There's a quick shortcut for you. You can move left and right with your keyboard also. So you can kind of zoom in if you want to zoom in. You can use the zoom command on this. There's some things you could do there. I'm not a big fan of using the zoom on this. So Just quickly do that. On the left-hand side here, you can drop down if you have anything stored. If you want to do, I don't know, QQQ, enter, just kind of put it right in there. And then you should have a, you know, any of the derivations of that are in there. So at ES, go back to that for a second. I typed that in wrong. There we go. So you can see what's happening right now. We hit the bottoms on this. We see that the short call on a 10-minute chart. So let's go through this chart for a second to see what we have here and just look at exactly what's going on in terms of what we saw here. So let's take a look. We had right about, when was that? That was 8:30 in the morning, a short call on the 10-minute chart. It happened right about 29.94 right there. And then what happened was we saw that the continuation of this, a new altimeter was formed. See that? You see 3 bars forming there right in the background? And a new altimeter was formed, and there was a, so far it's not closed yet, but there was a call for a closing. So this orange bar that you see right here was a closing trade. So what you want to do is look at that and say, okay, I got in at about 29.94. Closing trade is going to probably confirm somewhere about 29, we'll call it right about where it is right now, 29.85. So about a 9-point overall gain on that short trade. So you can, depending on where you are and what you're doing, depending on whether you're trading very short-term time frames or you're trading longer term. I mean, if we just kind of move this up a little bit to, let's say, a 15-minute time frame, it's still short. The longer time frames are probably going to be shorter at this point. And let's go to a 30-minute. 30 minutes still short. There hasn't been a new altimeter that's been drawn yet, but you can take your chart and look across here and find, hey, look at that. There was some support right at that level. When we look back from right to left, looking from right to left, we find there is another altimeter here. And if you break below that and you hold below that, you got a problem all the way down, probably through this hole, which is the whole point and the whole lessons that we always teach on TriggerCharts. These holes, these fast zones, these higher likelihood of a quick vertical movement through time. That's the big issue right there. So when we look at this and we find that there is these kind of levels that we're looking at, it's important to understand that you want to keep those in mind, draw those on your chart. You want to put a line in there. You want to just do a quick horizontal line, or if you want to put in, I don't know, if you want to put in a box, so let's just do a quick horizontal line right here saying, hey, this is an area that's of interest, and this is an area of interest. And then there's your box just naturally drawn, of course. Then you can kind of zoom out a little bit and see if there's anything else to play here. But yes, this is a good level of support right on this, we're kind of at 29.73. That's on, of course, this time frame. The longer you go, the shorter you go, will change things. Again, I'm just using my up and down keys. I'm clicking the end button, and I can kind of zoom into where I want to be on that. Any questions from anybody? Anything you want to discuss? Any things about TradeStation version 10 that you want to look at? Any stocks you want to look at? We didn't really cover a lot of stocks today. Tesla is something that you want to take a look at, of course. And I'm going to do that on a little bit of a longer term basis. Tesla's got some overhead right here, right where we stopped. It does break through this 239 level, probably a good shot up to about 253, maybe even up to 263. But you had this nice consolidation that went along for a while, and then all of a sudden a rotation. So something to kind of take a look at. Well, there we go. Markets are open. We're going to end it right there today. I don't think that we have too many chats coming. A lot of people probably a little hungover from July 5th. July 5th and the July 4th holiday. But, the bottom line is that here we are, and we're going to be looking at this as if there's going to be a change in the overall sentiment right now, considering the fact the Fed may or may not be in play, depending on what people believe is this jobs number. Be careful trading day today. You're going to probably see some light volume due to the fact that we are in a holiday session. So just keep that in mind. All right, we're going to have this available for replay. We'll answer any questions. If you do have questions, you can go over to TriggerCharts.com. There's a lot of videos on there. You can email us at any time to info@TriggerCharts.com, and we'll try to see if we can get you straightened away. If you haven't tried our products, there's a 10-day free trial. Anybody that subscribes and pays for the product right now, you get a 4-hour a 4-hour free online coaching session. You'll see how that is. We have these videos that we put together for you. You'll get that. So you can go over to the TradeStation Trading App Store and make sure to subscribe. Until next week, have a great week of trading. Have a great weekend. I'll see you again soon. Thanks.